Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another exciting edition of Created to Learn. And I'm just so very glad to have with me today is Pastor Marvin Wojda. Say hello, Pastor Marvin.
Yeah, hello, Alec. Nice to be with you today.
It's good to see you. Pastor Marvin is the senior pastor at Elim Tabernacle right here in the city of Saskatoon. And, I was one of those students attending Central Pentecostal College at the time, which is now Horizon, who attended many of the services down at Elim when they were down at 8th Street. And
Yeah.
what an amazing church, what an amazing ministry they have there. And they have just recently, I don't know how many years ago,
Wow.
relocated to a
Coming up
different
on 9
location.
years. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, beautiful facilities, and I had a chance to stop in a few times, talking to different people, and I sure hope that I can make a visit again soon.
Yeah.
And thank you, Pastor Marv, for coming on the show today. And can you just talk to our viewers for just a few minutes about maybe a little bit about your ministerial background and
Sure.
what you're doing today?
Yeah. So I've been here at Elim Church for I'm into my 32nd year here, I guess. I came in 1990. So
Yeah,
the beginning of 2021 was the beginning of my 32nd year.
yeah,
So heading up to 32 years. Served initially on staff as associate assistant pastor, and then about 18 months later. So when I was about 33, I became the lead pastor here, and so it's been that's been the journey. The church itself is really an amazing story of God's grace and keeping power. We turned 100 years old
wow,
in 2017, so the church began out of a revival movement, the early Pentecostal revival movement in Canada in 1917. So
wow,
I think I'm the longest serving pastor. Most of the early pastors back in the 1910s, 20s, 30s often were evangelists who were coming through and would stay a year or year and a half,
yeah,
hold services.
yeah,
And so, but it's been a great joy. It's been an amazing congregation.
yeah,
It's largely like very multicultural and multi-generational, and it's been a ministry that has really served not only our immediate community, but really the province and ministry
yeah.
around the world. So
Yeah.
it's been a great journey.
That's great. That's great. I understand that from my understanding, I think there's been quite a few students, even that I've gone to Bible school with, that are currently serving there. I'm not wouldn't be able to name names at this point, but
Yeah.
I understand that there have
Well,
been a
yeah,
handful there.
we've had a number of students from Horizon, not only who've attended here,
Yeah,
but who've served here, and then who've ended up on staff here. We have
yeah,
a couple of our children's pastors started out as volunteers in the children's ministry as Bible college students, and then ended up on our staff. So our current children's pastor, Angela's been with us maybe about
right. Yep.
12 or 15 years.
Yeah,
And she was a student at college, just started volunteering in our kids' ministry and has served now for many years. So
yeah,
it's been a great blessing to have Horizon College and Seminary right here in the city as a resource to us.
right. And there are also another facility that relocated from the older building
Yeah.
down to a newer building on by Forest Grove, I believe.
Yes, the right beside Forest Grove Church. It's on Webster Street, and they've moved in there, yeah, from their 8th
Yeah.
Street. So both of us moved off of 8th Street.
Right. Yeah. That was a good location. I mean, spent many nights, many days, just up
Yeah.
walking up and down. McDonald's was right next
Yes,
door to the college. And so that was a bit of a temptation. We couldn't go there every day, but it was,
exactly.
but yeah, I actually have yet to go and visit the facilities,
Yeah.
the new, because they also have the Saskatchewan district
Yes, the district
office there
office of
in
the
college.
Pentecostal Assembly of Canada is housed in this new building as well. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they've got the library all set up. If people want to go and just use the library, it's actually a very great theological library. Well
Yeah.
done. And
Yeah.
yeah, I give them
Yeah.
some props,
I dedefinitely have to go back. I have to schedule with Paul and see if I can
Yeah,
get a tour very
get a
soon
tour,
because I
yeah.
would like to go and visit it. Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
I Pastor Marvin, we've been discussing several things here on the show, and we've been talking primarily about learning and developing the mind and studying and
Yeah.
growing and just stuff like that. But I've been kind of been switching gears a little bit, and I wanted to try to focus our attention today as building a strong foundation as a
Sure.
believer in Jesus, because like I said, to different people that some of the things that are obvious, prayer, Bible reading, and church, and that's all fine. It's all true and needed. But I just kind of want to ask you, like, what are some of the things that you can provide for our viewers, especially on the passage that you and I were talking about? What are some of the things that we can do as believers, that somewhere along the way we've kind of missed or failed to recognize as
Yeah.
believers?
So the passage, of course, is the final section of Jesus'
Right.
Sermon on the Mount. At the end of chapter 7, he
Yeah.
talks about, the two builders, a foolish man who built on the sand, the wise man who built his house on the rock.
Yeah.
And, I think what it comes down to, Alec, is that it depends on whether you want a short-term kind of experience in Jesus,
Mhm.
or whether you really want a long-term,
Yeah.
lifelong experience of God's grace and salvation in your life. Because when Jesus talked about the two men and the two houses they built and the two foundations, I mean, both of them built the house.
Yep.
Both of them put a lot of effort in to see something built,
Right.
but one of them was very, very short-sighted in his planning for this house. He got the house up, but the first major storm that came along, he was without a house again.
Hmm.
And I think about situations where you're watching the news and fire wipes out a neighborhood, like what's
Yep.
happening in PA right now, right, where
Yeah.
houses are being threatened and that kind of thing. And the people are standing there, and just that devastation of having a house collapse. Jesus talked about a man who's completely devastated, but he's devastated not because of the storm. He's actually devastated because he didn't build the foundation.
Hmm.
Because the same storm that came against the other house was not able to topple that house. So,
Yeah.
I always envision, when I read this parable, I envision the two houses side by side. Like, one guy, they both built the houses side by side, the same storm, same conditions. The only difference is one guy invested in the foundation and the other guy didn't.
Hmm.
The thing that I know about foundations, and I've been involved in building a few houses, and then we built this facility. And
Yep.
one of the things about building a foundation is it's super unglamorous. Like,
Right.
you put a lot of work and steel and concrete into the ground that you're just going to cover up. Like,
Yeah.
there's nothing ecstatic about it, right? There's nothing excited. Like, when this building was being built, they took a lot of time. In fact, more time than I became impatient,
Hmm.
because they were dumping a lot of concrete and steel into the ground. It was a lot of money that went in, a lot of effort, a lot of thought,
Yeah.
and uh, none of that showed. Like, they just, when it was all over, they just buried it. And that's why foundations often are overlooked. Like, you don't drive down the street of a city and go, that's a nice foundation, that's a nice foundation. You go,
Right.
that's a
Yeah.
beautiful home. But if that home doesn't have a good foundation, then they're short-sighted in their planning.
Yeah.
So
Exactly.
I think the idea of foundation, it's unglamorous, it's the stuff that often people don't see,
Yeah.
but it's so necessary if you
Mhm.
want a long-term life of faith in
Right.
Jesus. And it's interesting to me when I read the parable, the only difference, I'm just kind of flipping some pages here to see
Mhm.
the
Yeah.
notes, but the only difference between the foundation, that the guy who built the foundation, the guy who didn't build the foundation, the only difference is that one obeyed the words of Jesus and one didn't.
Hmm.
They both heard. So it says here, Jesus said, therefore, everyone who hears these words of mine and puts them into practice is like a wise man. He goes to the foolish man. He says, this guy heard. I mean, he heard the words of Jesus. You go back through the Sermon on the Mount. It's,
Mhm.
Jesus has just preached this incredible sermon about
Yep.
counterculture, and it's very different than the life that is without Jesus. And Jesus says the only difference is not that they didn't, one heard and one didn't, both of them heard. The only difference was that one of them actually followed through and did what Jesus said. So it's not about the hearing. And Jesus' brother, his earthly half brother by the name of
Mm.
James, said something very similar to that. He basically said in James chapter 1 or 2, somewhere in there, he says, a man who who hears but doesn't put the word into practice.
Yeah.
You said he's like a man who looks in a mirror and walks away. I
Yeah.
mean, when you look in a mirror, what are you looking for? You're looking for imperfections, right? You're looking to see that nothing's in your nose, there's everything's taken out of your teeth.
Your teeth. Yeah.
And if you look in the mirror and you see stuff in your teeth and you see stuff in your nose and your hair is all disheveled, but you walk away and you forget,
Hmm.
that has been a useless experience.
Mm-hmm.
So the person who reads the word, looks into the mirror of God's word, sees what's wrong, but never follows through fully in doing what the word says,
Exactly.
they haven't built the foundation, right?
Yeah.
So then when the storms come and there's no foundation of having done God's word, then they fall apart. So you see people who have a really good start, they build the house, but they don't follow through on
Mm.
obedience to God's word, and and then they have no foundation
Yeah.
when the difficult times come, right? I don't
Exactly.
know. Did that hammer some of the points
Oh
you were
yeah,
looking
absolutely.
for?
Yeah. And I really appreciate what you just said in regards, because I know the obvious thing would be to talk about a foundation for a building, a house, or anything like that. And I totally agree. I mean sometimes, and one of the things that I was thinking about as you were talking was, everybody just kind of wants to get, like, even if you're building your own house,
Yep.
everybody wants to just get, okay, let's just get the foundation built right away. Let's just get it out of the way, so we can, because we want to get to the exciting stuff, like the
Yep.
walls and the roof and the shingles and all
Yep.
that. Everything that everybody's going to see. Let's just skip process. Let's forget about the. Let's just
Yep.
let's get this foundation laid with already. So, but not really
Yep.
realizing that that's the most crucial part of the entire building. And like you said, nobody likes to see it.
Yeah.
Like, I really like what you said. Nobody drives around. Let's say, hey, that's a pretty cool foundation you got built over there. It's always about the house, but
Yep.
what's under the house is what's important.
Yeah.
I mean, everything on the
Right.
surface level,
And
everything is visible. Yeah, go right ahead.
yeah.
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah, sorry.
Well, I was thinking, a lot of obedience is done in secret, isn't it, Alec?
Yes. Yeah.
Like, a lot of when we think about obedience, it's like a foundation,
Mhm.
because when the foundation is built, I mean, nobody's really looking at it. And
Yeah.
that's true of our obedience. Public obedience, that's easy in some ways. You could put on the show,
Oh
but I
yeah.
think what Jesus, when you read the Sermon on the Mount, it's heart attitude, it's how I forgive,
Yeah.
it's the beatitudes, it's
Mhm.
humility, it's all of those character qualities,
Right.
and none of that is a lot of that is unseen.
Yeah.
So I think it's what you do in your private world, it's what you do, that's how you build the foundation.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. And this is why I
Yeah.
really feel it's very important for us as believers to really have that strong, solid foundation. And like I said, it's going to take work. It's going to take time. And this is why I try to tell people so very often that, don't skip process. And
No.
because, a lot of people, as soon as they get saved, and I've heard of people like this, I've known people like this, as soon as they get saved, in about a year or two, they want to get into ministry. They
Yeah.
want the pulpit, they want the platform, they want the microphone, the instrument. But you know what? Again, I can't stress it enough. Don't skip process.
Right.
And foundational teachings is just so very important. And I believe that this is where discipleship really does need to come into play
Yeah. Yeah.
for everyone. For everyone.
Yes. Because you think about some of our ministry colleagues who are out of ministry today.
Hmm.
It's usually not because they didn't preach well, or they didn't administrate well. They had some failure in the secret place, right? They had a failure in the interior of their life,
Yeah.
and today they've been disqualified.
Mm.
Again, not because they could build a nice house,
Oh yeah.
but there was something happening internally that they just they didn't address, right?
Hmm.
And that's what takes people out. And
Yeah.
when the storms come, that's what happens, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And again, and that's why I'm, like I said to you earlier, that foundation is just so very important.
Yeah.
And I really do like that. For however long I need to spend on it, I'll spend on it as long as I can, because
Yeah.
that is going to be the sure foundation, just like we've read in that parable, like when the storms come. And you know what, just thinking about it now, I really do think, and you may want to comment on this a little bit, is that I really do think, COVID has really uh, helped define a lot of us as believers. I don't know what you think about that, because having been away from church, being in isolation, going on
So just
lockdown
got you.
and all that. So, but I don't know. Like,
Yeah,
what are your
you
thoughts on
know,
that?
yeah. So I lost you a little bit there on the
That's
Zoom call,
okay.
but
Yeah,
I think what I heard you ask is during COVID, where people have been away from other believers in that,
yeah,
some of them have really struggled, right?
yeah, yeah.
And I think that's a reality. And certainly as a pastor, that's been my concern is
Hmm.
now there's hundreds of people we've contacted, we've heard from, we know that, that they're connected to the vine, they're growing in Jesus. But I'm concerned that when we come out of COVID, are we going to kind of find the landscape littered a little bit with people who just got discouraged along the way,
Yeah.
rather than continuing to invest in the foundation,
Hmm.
walking in obedience to Jesus, a life of prayer, walking through ensuring the scriptures are still being, read and lived out in your life. COVID has been a big storm. When
Hmm.
Jesus talked about the great storm crashed against the building,
Yeah.
COVID has been that great storm for a lot of people.
Hmm.
And so that's why I think even as the storm is battering, I think you can still keep pouring concrete into the foundation of your
All
life
right. Yeah,
by
exactly.
continued obedience. There's
Yeah.
all room for that because often we have good intentions. Like, how many, when you go to Facebook Marketplace or to Kijiji, how many treadmills are being sold that never got used?
Right.
People had these, grand intentions of doing good things,
Yes.
being obedient,
Yeah.
and that treadmill then 2 years later, it's been used 3 times because we have good intentions. And that's often true spiritually. We intend to follow Jesus, we intend to walk in obedience to the Lord,
Yeah.
but we just don't follow through. And it's the
Hmm.
follow through
Yeah.
that is the point of this parable, right? It's the doing. It's not just the hearing of
Yeah.
God's word. It's actually doing it, you
Hmm.
know.
Hmm. That's so great, because even, but at the same time, when you do think of COVID and the isolations and the lockdowns that we've had, and the transitions, with government regulations and all that, I think this probably could have been used to our advantage. Spending time with our families and in prayer and worship and Bible reading and all that stuff, right? But
Yeah.
but there is something. But I think we could only thrive off of that for so long, because we do need community with other people. And
Yeah.
thankfully, we were able to do that. I'm sure you guys done the same, of how you guys have utilized technology. You're able to do face-to-face interaction through Zoom, through video calling and all that, and putting your services up on live stream and just making something available for your people. Because,
Yeah.
and thankfully, that we are still able to meet together, only at
Yeah.
a certain number of people,
Yeah,
right?
well,
And
back to 150 here coming up shortly.
I
So,
I'm so thankful for that, but I was kind of disappointed that we had to drop back down again. But still, you still have a number of people that you're still able to connect with, and
yeah, I mean, it doesn't, just because you can't meet in large groups doesn't mean that you can't get on the phone or on a Zoom
no,
call with somebody or meet in a backyard with
yeah,
9 other people. Like, if your heart is hungry for fellowship, you're going to find a way to do it.
oh yeah,
And like our young adults tonight, they're meeting outside. We can meet in groups of 10. I
yeah,
think they've got 9 or 10 groups of 10. We're going to have 100 people meeting, but they're going to be in groups of 10 outside, right?
all
So you
right,
find a way when your heart is hungry
yeah,
to fellowship with others, to be encouraged by others, to encourage other people, you're going to find a way to do it.
yes,
Uh,
absolutely.
yeah, yeah,
I just really appreciate these kinds of conversations, and just the reason why I wanted to go in this direction, because I think there's just so many people that are out there, and if you're listening today, a strong foundation is important, and like I said, and I can't say it enough, do not skip process, because if you have to spend several years, a few years building
yeah,
that foundation, then do it. And a lot of what has already been said, especially today, is so very helpful. It can be useful for you. and I just hope that it'll help you in the long run. Like you said, a lot of people think short term, a lot of people think long term, right? And it's all
Yeah.
based upon the foundation.
Foundations are about yeah, foundations are about long-term plans.
Yes,
That you build them. Yeah,
I couldn't agree more. Yeah.
yeah, for sure.
Pastor Marvin, thank you so much for coming on board. I just want to ask you if you could just kind of explain to some of our viewers about the church and the ministry and where they can go to find
I
out
mean,
more information.
right now, you can reach us at online. It's elimchurch.ca.
Yep.
And that's where, and we're on social media, so Facebook and Instagram as well. But all of that can be accessed through elimchurch.ca, and our online services are there. They're on YouTube. We actually have a really interesting, cool way to connect with people. If you connect, we have 3 weekend services online, but if you connect with our 10:15 Sunday morning, you can go to what's called All Through Live, which is an interactive experience where people where you can sit around tables, you can be in the service virtually with others, see who's in your row, and interact with those in your row. So that's probably the information. But 3 weekend services: Saturday night 6:30, and then 9 and 10:15 on Sunday through. And then after Sunday's 10:15 service, it's all on demand. So it's through our website, our YouTube channel. Yeah.
That's great. That's great. Like you said, the numbers are going to go back up pretty soon. And if you are in the Saskatoon area, I really would encourage you to go check out the church, Elim Tabernacle, and you can find all the information for the location of the church on there. And I really would encourage you drop in, and I believe you'll be a blessing to you. And and I have to go drop by soon. And
well, please come by, Alec. Yeah, just when you drop in, make sure that you have time for coffee, and we'll check in with you. Appreciate you doing this and the work that you're doing. As I understand, your job takes you out of town. You've got a week, and you spend it trying to train others, and things God has deposited within you, you're pouring them out to others. So God bless you in that, and in this work.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Well, thank you, Pastor Marvin, for joining me today. And I just want to thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for joining with us here on this exciting episode of Created to Learn. And be sure to check back again for more exciting episodes right here. Thank you very much.
Goodbye, everybody.